Here we are, playoff edition of the All 32 Pod. Mike Giardi with Will Parkinson. As always, not only are we going to break down all the games, but we obviously are in the middle of the coaching and GM search season, so we're definitely going to hit that as well. And just a quick shout out to the Notre Dame-Penn State game. Maybe the college playoffs have not been awesome, but if you watched Thursday night's game in Miami, what a freaking football game. Two teams laid it out on the line. You were texting me. It was like, it's old school football. They beat the crap out of each other. Just a freaking awesome football game. I need some of that this weekend. You got me. They got my blood flowing for this weekend. Give me some of that on Fridays, Saturday and Sunday rather.
Yeah. First half, horrible. You were like, dude, this is tough. These teams suck. Second half was special. It was exactly what you want in a Final Four level game. It was Marcus Freeman showing why I think he's a superstar. And I really truly believe this. And again, like I don't know if anyone's going to do it, but every team that has an opening should be requesting Marcus Freeman and saying, let's just at least try. Peter Schrager had the report about the Bears job. He did redo his deal about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the buyout's not. I think it's about $9 million. An NFL team very much should be. I don't know. He, to me, is like, you want to talk about culture builder and all these different things. Dude's 38 years old and took a program who no one took seriously for the last 15 years in terms of big games. They have 5 top 10 wins, or top 25 wins this year. More than James Franklin or whatever has in whatever amount of years.
1 in 15.
Yeah. Why was Raheem Morris on the sideline for Penn State?
I know, it's really weird. Did you see there's also a shot of, and I know they were there for the game, but Lee Corso was literally at one point in the game standing directly behind.
There was a lot of weird things going on yesterday, but great football game. And we got a lot to get into.
This show, as always, the All 32 Pod, brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network, and Game Time best tickets, best prices to get you to see any event that you want to see. Well, you mentioned Freeman, and I think it's a great point. And Peter Schrager did have the report about Chicago being interested in sort of being Chicago's going through. They're talking to a lot of different people, and I wonder if maybe they're taking their time here because maybe Marcus Freeman is a little higher up.
Or Ryan Day.
Yeah, right, on the board than we think. But let's get into some of the news that happened since the last time we talked. The Raiders fired Antonio Pierce, which we thought should have happened, and they delayed it a little bit. And then a day later, they fired Tom Telesco. The general feeling is, hey, they want to get both the GM and the head coach on the same schedule in terms of contract and everything, which makes a ton of sense, in my opinion. A lot of teams aren't doing this, including one in my backyard, and we'll talk about in a little bit. But Tom Brady's influence here, I think, is pretty important to note. And I think, for instance, Ben Johnson taking 4 virtual interviews this week, one with the Raiders. And considering his desire to have a quarterback, they don't have a quarterback, and where they're picking right now, they're going to have to do some movement to get up in the quarterback draft. I think that the only reason Ben Johnson has taken that is because of a belief or a respect for Tom Brady. And maybe all of a sudden now the Raiders are a little bit more serious than they've been in previous years. How do you feel about that?
I actually feel the opposite.
Okay.
I think that the Raiders and the Titans we'll get to in a second here, have gotten a huge free pass in a lot of the ways they've operated, especially the Raiders have 11 coaches, and over a long stretch of time, right? Oh, okay, that's not too bad. Mark Davis is going to be paying 4 coaches, 4 GMs, all at the same time. They've had 4 different guys on the job, and then maybe even a 5th if you, account interns, placeholders since 2021 or 2022. Like it's gotten to the point where you're not in that job longer than, I think the average is 30 games. You have that job. Like the Gruden thing. Yeah. You couldn't have foreseen that. And sure, you give them a break there. Okay, man. Hey, they go to Josh and it's like, okay, probably should have gotten fired, but still it's like, well, it's a pretty short leash. And you go to Pierce and you're like, you shouldn't have retained him, and they still do it. And then you fire him anyways. And I think I told you this offseason, go back and look at the games they won last year with Pierce as the interim. It wasn't actually, It wasn't like this well-coached team. It was like, hey, we hated Josh McDaniels so much that anybody we would have played harder for. And I'm sure Pierce has good qualities as a leader, but he's not an X's and O's guy. He's not a experienced coach. He wasn't good with the clock, wasn't good with fourth downs and different things. Like, there was no real redeeming quality in the pressers. He's liking stuff on Instagram. Disaster. The Telesco thing is where I'm frustrated. I think it's BS to have a guy who actually had a really impressive draft last year lose his job after a year. If you were going to fire him after a year, why did you give him this long contract? You know, there's just things there, and I understand the organizational alignment, but if you're an owner, I mean, if you're a GM or a head coach, what's appealing about this job other than Tom Brady in Vegas? I get those are big appeals. That's great. This roster, you're probably going to trade Max Crosby, and if you don't, you're extending a guy who's, I don't know that's going to age the best, if we're being honest. Right. The way he plays, like, feels like a guy who you get as much as you can out of him in a short stretch. You know, Bowers is great. They have some nicer young offensive linemen. Christian Wilkins' contract kind of sucks. What else is there on that team? Robert Spillane's a nice backer. Like, I don't know that you feel great about the actual roster. The division's extremely difficult. And frankly, if you don't do well over a 12 to 20, you're going to get fired. So I get all of that, but there's red flags to me.
So this is where I think it's why I'm wondering if it's changing, because it feels as though, even though Mark is clearly impetuous and makes rash decisions, that he might have better checks and balances with Brady being more involved. And, you know, there's Richard Seymour, there's different people in there, but Brady to me is the big one, and it's the big draw.
Yeah, I don't think Trask referred to Seymour and said that he's going to have a very big influence in this as well.
So I don't see Ben Johnson taking this interview unless there's obviously back channeling going on, as we know, that he has an idea that, hey, maybe the worm has turned there and this job is more attractive than it should be. You mentioned the Titans. So a year after they fire Mike Vrabel because they didn't feel like, well, there were a lot of things there, but the collaboration, they were really pushing a collaborative nature with first-year GM Rand Carthon. They let Brian Callahan stay, but they fire Carthon after just his second season. I've said it all along. I think the roster is a goddamn mess. It's like, it makes
bottom 3 in the league.
Yeah, it made no sense. Like, hey, let's pay Ridley. That's great. He's a good player, and they have some older players. The roster just, it didn't make any sense, and I don't think they put Brian Callahan in the best position. And I don't know if he can coach or not. Quite frankly, I think that team is a mess. Amy Adams Strunk, the owner, talk about rash and impetuous. One bad decision after another there, and look, there's only one of 32 jobs, but even now they're structuring.
Is it even really a GM job? So that's my big issue here, is that I think anyone you asked around the league, if they were being honest, Rand Carthon did a less than stellar job. I know it was 2 years. I know 2 years for a GM is very different than 2 years for a coach. All these things are true. I understand the optics of it. They got the number 1 pick, and like, hey, you know, he hired the coach, so why? Those are all fair. If you have, this is a bigger issue, and we don't have, it's playoff time, and we'll get more into this in the offseason. The head of football operations, the president of football operations, the team president, these different roles that a lot of these organizations, and frankly, a lot of the bad ones have. There's good examples, right? A Chris Spielman in Detroit who works hand in hand with the owner in terms of helping culture build, hire, and then get out of the way, right? Yep. Those are the good guys, quote unquote, in the league. There's also the Rich McKays. There's also in this case Chad Brinker. Mm-hmm. Chad Brinker has final say over the 53-man roster. What's the GM's job? So you don't report to the owner. You report to a guy above you. That guy above you isn't a general manager, but yet has decision. Mike, let's just say the Titans go, we're going to trade back from 1. We can get a haul. The Raiders, the Giants, they want Shedeur really badly. I don't agree with it, but let's just say they do. And he goes, no, I'm good. I don't want to do that. So you can't.
Right.
What? That's, to me, that's it. If you're going to this job, I think Diana Rossini reported Reggie McKenzie is the favorite for this job. I love the list the Titans put out, by the way. They requested some great names, names that I would have, Borgonzi, Dodds, et cetera. You're like, wow, the Titans there's an attractive job because it's Nashville and and the first overall pick. I don't think it's an attractive job because it's really an assistant GM job because you don't have final say over the 53. Mike, that is a huge, huge problem. And I honestly don't understand why you would have a structure that goes that way when we see the NFL, the best organizations, that's not the way it works. And I'm honestly mind boggled that this is still a thing.
100%. And just to clarify the role, and people actually had to do digging on this, and this is from Jonathan Jones, I believe, of CBS Sports. The NFL reviewed the description of the Titans GM position, and the two sides have agreed that the vacant position will be the primary football executive post. Non-GMs cannot be blocked by their current teams from accepting the interview request. But again, that you have to go through this thing and clarify what the role means just proves the level of dysfunction. I have good friends down there who work for the team. I have good friends who cover the team. And all I get from them is it's a bleep show. It's been a bleep show. And as they like to call her, Miss Amy has screwed this thing up. Think about this, for the entirety of Vrabel's tenure, even though the final 2 years there was a drop off in wins, they were a relevant franchise. And even when they were losing the last 2 years, they were competitive in losing. And now they're 3-14. They're getting their doors blown off left and right, and they're aimless. It's a hot mess.
The one thing I want to thing here, I'm going to give you a quiz here. How many people do you think are considered football executive leadership for the Titans? They're listed on the Titans website. This is not inside info.
I'm saying it's a stupid number. It's like 8.
It's 1. It's just Chad Brinker.
Oh, just Brinker. Okay, so
what about on the business side?
Well, maybe that's where they have the absurd number.
You guessed it right. You just 8 people on the business side, and then 1 person on the football side. Again, the Jets have this issue, and we'll get to the Jets in a second. When you prioritize, and it feels like you prioritize business over football, and you trust the wrong people, I'm not saying all president of football operations guys are bad. I think it's really important for a first-time GM to have a person that is a parallel to them. They can lean on, can help build out departments, can help build out scouting and analytics groups and all these different things. But anyone that's seen Game of Thrones, the character Littlefinger, I'm so serious when I use this example. Those guys exist in every organization if you let it. And these owners and these billionaire owners end up sometimes trusting their own people. And when they do that, we see a lot of organizational failure. When you look at the Hunts, I'm just using the Chiefs as the example because they are the model organization, at least on-field product in the NFL. Brett Veach and Andy Reid make the decisions. The ownership's not perfect there, but you know what they do? They don't have Littlefinger that's a guy that's above Brett Veach, that's telling Brett Veach and Mike Borgonzi what to do on draft night, but then saying it's your fault, and if you don't win, you're fired. That's the stuff we talk about the Patriots, all these things. That is such a pain point for me that I'm telling you, look at the organizations that struggle. It's all the same. It's all the same owners that meddle or owners that have henchmen that meddle, and it doesn't ever end well.
Where are you with the Jets search currently? Obviously, both head coach and GM.
So I know I went on a tangent there.
I'm
just telling you, it's just one of those things that we don't talk about enough in the league, and it's always like these fancy titles. It's like, hey, why did this guy get fired right away? It's because Trent Baalke has the owner's son's ear and the owner's ear, and that's why he's survived 800 times. From a Jets perspective, quickly, they've had now in-persons Mike Borgonzi, Mike Greenberg, probably the 2 favorites from the GM perspective. Nick Hallaby as well from the Eagles. In-person GMs, they've complied with the Rooney Rule. Ray Farmer and Louis Riddick have interviewed there. And again, not to be that guy, but in order to make a decision or on anybody, Borgonzi, I didn't think would take the interview. He has, Northeast guy. It would be a huge get for the Jets if they were able to get this across the finish line. Seems like he's the top candidate. From a head coaching perspective, they've interviewed pretty much anybody that's ever coached football in their life for both these positions. Vrabel obviously looks like he's going to be the Patriots' next head coach, which we'll talk about here in a second. I would say Aaron Glenn's probably the favorite. He told Rich Cimini, or back channel through Rich Cimini, this was his dream job. Again, this is a guy that played for the Jets, first-round pick, was a part of this massive turnaround for fans old enough to remember when the Jets got traded for Parcells and stuff. Aaron Glenn, first-round pick in 1994, was here for the Jets, becoming pretty relevant and good for a long stretch of 97 through 2011, where they were a very respectable franchise. I'm sure Pats fans and Dolphins fans and Bills fans would even admit, like, they were in the playoffs at least every other year. Glenn also worked as a scout for the Jets for quite some time before going to New Orleans and then obviously to Detroit. He'd probably be the odds-on favorite at the moment. I would say other names just to keep an eye on: Brian Flores, obviously, as well. The other kind of rogue one, and I texted you about this, there's a chance here Josh McCown's the Jets' next head coach. And I know in the grand scheme of things, it seems like, Will, that is insane. I don't know if it's insane. In some ways, I almost think he'd be a better head coach right away than an offensive coordinator, because he's never called plays. And while it was high school, he was a high school head coach, and he has that leadership quality, Tim. And sometimes it's not about, we talked about Mike Tomlin. I think you brought up the example earlier this week about Mike Tomlin. And I'm not by any means saying that Josh McCown's Mike Tomlin yet, but everyone knows he was going to get that Texans job until Flores sued the league 4 years ago. Like, that was his job. He was getting it. They were going to give it to him, and they end up hiring David Culley, and we obviously, and then Lovie Smith, and then D'Amico. But I don't think people would roll their eyes around the league as much about Josh being the Jets next head coach, because I just think some guys have it, and he seems like a guy who has it. Whether he's going to be successful and the Jets would be patient enough with him and all these different things. But I would say right now, if you told me percentage-wise, I'd say 50% Aaron Glenn, 20 Flores, 15 McCown, and then what am I at there? 70, 85.
85, yeah.
15% maybe Matt Nagy is probably the other one, just because experienced guy. If they hired Borgonzi, would he bring over Nagy? But yeah, it'll be interesting. They've interviewed a lot of people. They can make a hire at any time, but again, a lot of the guys, Greenberg, Borgonzi, Glenn, Flores, are all in the playoffs still, so nothing really can be done anytime soon.
Yeah, I would just, when you mentioned Borgonzi as probably their top choice, it just immediately leads me to Nagy. And look, 34-31 in Chicago,
when the playoffs twice.
When we consider the dumpster fire that they've generally been both before and after, maybe we didn't give him enough credit for that. He just seems so freaking uninspired to me. But if Borgonzi's been with him for a while now, if Borgonzi feels like he's ready for this round two and he's going to be better, then, he's got certainly some institutional knowledge there. Let's get on to the Patriots. Actually, you know what? Let's do this first. Let's talk about Prize Picks, because we're in playoff football and you got an opportunity here. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Over 10 million members, billions of dollars in award winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on 2 and up to 6 players for a chance to win 1,000 times your cash. Again, we're in the postseason now, so you're running out of time here for an NFL guy to do Prize Picks. Easy for us to do this, and CLNS giving you a great deal here. Sign up today. Use the code CLNS. You get $50 off instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So again, download the app. Use the code CLNS to get 50% off with a $5 play. Prize Picks. Run your game all season long. All right, let's do Pats now. Mike Vrabel had his in-person interview in downtown Boston with Robert and Jonathan Kraft. He's not technically the GM. I forget what his title is. Elliot Wolf, who's essentially the GM, and his right-hand man, good buddy, Alonzo Highsmith. Those were the only 4 people in the room with Vrabel. It concluded around 5 o'clock yesterday. He obviously is the odds-on favorite. I would say it's a 2-horse race. We're taping this Friday. It's 10:48. Ben Johnson is scheduled for his virtual interview today. They requested Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn said thanks, but no thanks, because Aaron Glenn is a smart man and realized, they didn't ask me before, and then they got some crap about the 2 candidates they interviewed to fulfill the Rooney Rule, which were Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich. Both guys have been out of football for 2 seasons, and said, I'm not doing this. Like, you guys got
Pep
some
Hamilton
black.
of like the like New Jersey Defenders and Byron Leftwich, who has not coached since 2020.
I talked to people around the league, and they were like, and look, I think generally the consensus is it's Mike Vrabel is the odds-on favorite to take the job. But they were like, you want to make a mockery out of the Rooney Rule. That's exactly how you do it. Go request Brian Flores. Go request Aaron Glenn.
Mike, real quick, just some kind of breaking news before we have not talked a lot about the Cowboys. It seems as though, per Tom Pelissero, after several days of discussion, Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy remain open to moving forward together. The sides are expected to open talks on a new contract today. So that looks like that's not going to open. I just wanted, before Cowboys fans didn't want to ignore you. Looks Absolutely. Like
it felt like it was going to head that way when they denied the request for the Bears to interview him. Like, okay, we're going to figure this out, and we're going to get you. It's probably going to be a shorter. Probably won't
I just want to make sure we hit on that before we.
100%. So Aaron Glenn, look, I'm not taking a part of this sort of sham thing. I think that Patriots are open to the idea that Ben Johnson could make an incredible pitch today, and all of a sudden say, hey, this 2-horse race that Mike's a couple horse heads ahead. Now all of a sudden it's a little closer, and maybe we do put the brakes on this a little bit and see, if we can get Ben Johnson in person and see if we have that same vibe in person that we did on Zoom. But I still think this comes down to the notion that Vrabel is the right guy at the right moment for this franchise. They have been unstable, even at the end of the Belichick era, and certainly through the circus and clown show that was the Gerard Mayo brief era here in New England. They need to raise the floor, which Mike Vrabel raises the floor on this football team. He will give them a real identity and a real culture. I think the notion of Ben Johnson as a play caller, and the fact that he does have a lot of experience, he's coached wide receivers, he's coached tight ends, he's been around the league, he coached in college as well. That's where he started at BC. Like, there's more experience there than some of these other hotshot, tight pants wearing offensive coordinators. However, I still think that's a big risk, and I'm not sure that they're willing to take that risk at this point. So again, I think the general feeling here that I've gotten is, if Ben Johnson is so awesome on Friday, maybe we slow our roll. But generally, my feeling is Mike Vrabel is going to end up being the head coach of this football team, and I think it's the right thing for the football team.
Yeah, it feels like Vrabel's announced Monday, unless Ben Johnson or presser Monday or announced Monday, unless we hear that Johnson totally dominated. One thing you've heard about Ben Johnson is that he doesn't interview great. We hear that a lot of times when guys don't get jobs, they don't interview well,
let's face it, the Zoom thing.
It's hard to interview.
If you don't interview great and you're trying to do it over Zoom, I mean, there's that slight delay. It's like, you don't know, weird. You can't read body language necessarily. That's a tough thing. When do you jump in? When do you not jump in?
No, it seems like Patriots fans, at least a lot of people I interact with on Twitter and things like that. A lot of people want Ben Johnson. It seems like Vrabel was like, it's like almost too easy. So now now people are looking at Ben Johnson. I get at the end of the day, I think people are like, hey, we've never had a real coaching search in 25 years. This is the hotshot offensive coordinator. We haven't had an offensive coach in forever. I feel like we have the heir to Brady in a lot of ways of like the franchise quarterback we could really compete with. Why not get the hotshot offensive? I get all of that. And I think in a lot of ways, Ben might be successful with the Patriots if he's going to be successful anywhere, because he would have the quarterback to do so. I have my reservations about Ben Johnson. I continue to come back to this. I think it's very weird that for the third year in a row, or really fourth year, but third year in a row, it almost felt like looking for a reason to not take jobs. He almost got on the flight, but didn't. Then the next year, it's like he almost gets on the flight, then he doesn't. Then now it's like he needs the perfect organization. I understand, like, he's the highest paid offensive coordinator, one of them in the league. He's in a great situation. All that's fair. His mentor is Adam Gase. And there's just 10% of me that's like, is he just maybe an awesome offensive coordinator and like not the best leader of men and stuff? And Vrabel's kind of the direct opposite. Like, I think he's good with scheme, but I think a priority is culture. And I think the Patriots have a culture problem right now. And I think that very similar to the reason I wanted him for the Jets was because I think both teams are kind of in that, like, we spiraled and we probably hired the wrong guy last time. We need to reel it in quickly. Mike, I guess my one question for you would be, a lot of talk is Josh McDaniels now. If people are kind of transitioning, your colleague Greg Bedard, with BSJ is kind of talking about Josh McDaniels, and feels like, is Robert Kraft going to give Vrabel the 15 to 18 million? It seems like it's going to require to get him, and then the 4 million or so to Josh McDaniels, and the 3 million to Shane. But like, is Robert Kraft up for that? I guess is my question for you.
Well, when you have the McDaniel situation, considering he's being paid still he's got about $40 million left on his Raiders contract. The Patriots sure do love to get guys that already have contracts with someone else so you can offset.
Love some offset money.
Yeah. I don't know what the actual language is, but I would assume that he's not going to cost them $4 million, that's going to be a little bit cheaper than that. Obviously McDaniel still lives here. He lives close to the stadium, hasn't left. It's just an easy transition. I did, and I wrote this on Thursday in the Boston Sports Journal, is one source said they should, like, Drake May is not making the decisions, although I don't think Drake is. In fact, I know Drake's not all that pleased that Alex Van Pelt got treated the way he did, and he still hasn't been fired, but we all assume he's fired. That Josh can be abrasive, and that's not what Alex is. Alex is not abrasive, and I mean, you talk to anyone who's ever played with Alex or you coached with Alex, and they'll tell you that. And Josh can get on you, and Josh will grind you to a nub and then some. I mean, we've seen it in his head coaching jobs, but talk to the guys that worked here, and played for him here. You're in the building for a long time. And I don't say that as a bad thing. I just say it's different. This isn't 2008 anymore. We got a different kind of athlete. It's a different kind of way of doing things. And has he adapted enough? He did a relatively nice job with Mac Jones, who hasn't been the same player since Josh walked out the door, between the Patricia Judge, Bill O'Brien, and now obviously what we've seen in Jacksonville. But that's an interesting one to me. Bowen is another name you mentioned. Shane Bowen, currently the defensive coordinator with the Giants. We were a little bit surprised that Daboll kept his job. The defense wasn't very good. John Mara ripped the defense in his press conference, said, like, I'm tired of watching teams go up and down the field on us. Does that mean Shane Bowen is going to be the one who becomes the fall guy there? And if that's the case, again, that'd be offset language. So if you were to hire him, as he was Vrabel's DC for 3 years officially, but technically he was the defensive coordinator for 4 years. He just didn't have the title. So there are things lining up and shaping up for him. And one last thing on this whole search, and I referenced it in my story on Tuesday, the push and pull between this previous coaching staff and the front office laying blame at the feet of the coaches, saying, we gave you better players. You didn't develop these players, especially the young players. A lot of pushback this week, not just from that side of it in the story I did, but then later in the week when other people did the same story, was more of that line of thinking, like, well, Jalen Polk was plug and play. What? Like, that's not Jalen. That was them. We think Caden Wallace is going to be a really good tackle in this league. That was them. So you have a lot of that right now. And I would just say, and again, my belief is that Mike's going to have his own people when all's said and done. But if they're trying to force that down Mike's throat, and if that is a potential sticking point, that should be a potential sticking point if I'm Mike Vrabel. I'm not taking Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith without my guys being in the building or at all. So just something to consider as we're taping, it's Friday, it's 11 o'clock. They're still doing their interview with Ben Johnson at this moment. But if you start to hear maybe some potential reservations, or you're wondering, why isn't this done yet? Or the way you start to get some national people saying this, that, and the other thing about, well, don't, pump the brakes on Vrabel. That could be one of the reasons why the brakes might get pumped. And again, I still expect it to get done. I would just keep it in mind. Keep that in the back of your head if things end up falling apart, because I think there's definitely, especially based on Vrabel's last stop and how it went sideways in his last stop between ownership and the general managers, because John Robinson at the end and Vrabel sort of separated as well. That's something to keep an eye on. We talk about Prize Picks, let's talk about game time because we've got playoff football. We're full-fledged in the NBA, NHL seasons as well. You want tickets, use Game Time. It's simple, it's easy. Filter out all the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. They have the full cashback guarantee. Like if you find a better price elsewhere, they'll meet it 110%. In fact, download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly. That's not the right ad. That is the I just did the combo platter. Game Time, I apologize. There. Game Time's the best. I'm reading from two different separate pieces of paper, and I screwed it up. Download the Game Time app, folks. Create an account and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. They are the best, even if I am the worst. Let's get to the games. I don't love this game at all. This is going to kick off the slate on Saturday, 4:30 kickoff. Chargers at the Texans. LA won their final 3 games, Will. The Texans 1-2 over their last 3, including a 31-2 home loss to the Baltimore Ravens when the entire world was watching. I just don't. Texans were a great story last year. We have talked a lot about their flaws, especially offensively this season. Now you don't have Tank Dell. You haven't had Stephon Diggs for a good portion of the year. I just don't think they have enough horses offensively to beat what is a very well-coached, very disciplined Charger football team.
Yeah, I'll keep this one short and sweet. Couple things. I don't know if we nailed it exactly. I have to go back and listen, but I'm pretty sure we thought the Texans were going to win 10 games and win the division, and the Chargers would win 10 or 11 and be a playoff team. I think I had them as the 5 or the 6 seed. So I feel good about how that ended. I think the Jesse Minter versus Bobby Slowick matchup is going to determine this football game. Can the Texans protect CJ Stroud? Can Stroud avoid some of these critical mistakes? If they can, and they can run the football with Joe Mixon, I think this will be a good football game. This feels to me very much like Chargers comfortable 24-13 win, or the Texans eke it out and we're like, well, like, did we misread them? Oh my God, did they get on track last week against the bad Texans team? They got their mojo back. This is the team we saw and we thought we were going to see going into the year. This doesn't feel like the Chargers win close. This feels like either it's a comfortable, not a blowout, but like never really in doubt type of game where Herbert's good. And this is a big game for Herbert. I think he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. I think he deserves all the praise. But at some point, you do want to see him win a playoff game. And I feel like this is a great spot. You win a playoff game, potentially you could be going to Arrowhead next week. And they've played well there. And, hey, could you keep it close? So I don't think it's as big for Stroud. He got the playoff. He had the big win last year, against Cleveland. And obviously in hindsight, was that win that great? Probably not, but it doesn't matter. Trevor Lawrence had the playoff win over Herbert. And now it's like we don't give him as much of a hard time. So this feels like Chargers comfortable win or Texans close win. I would heavily lean Chargers comfortable win just because I think D'Amico's a nice coach and I like D'Amico, but I think defensively, Bobby Slowick's had a really rough year. I know he's been requested for some jobs and whatever. I don't know that if this doesn't go south, he has a job with the Texans next year. This feels like you better not,
he hasn't evolved this year. He just hasn't evolved. In fact, quite frankly, he stopped evolving late last year. And that's when we did the offseason pods. We're talking, I'm like, keep an eye on this. Cause he didn't show me.
Yeah. It's
much.
like, it's like hard to like, there wasn't like you didn't get this feeling of like they do anything that's like cool.
Once the league figured out how he called games, how he schemed it, they solved him, and he hasn't had a counterpunch for that. And if you don't have a counterpunch, this is what happens. There is 2 things I wanted to quickly mention. You talked about Herbert, 23 TDs this year, 3 interceptions. And yet when you watch him, it's not like he's Mr. Safe check down guy. He's pushing the ball downfield. I think it was an elite year for him, regular season wise, despite really, truly only having one good receiver, and that's Ladd McConkey.
They're the Tyler Warren team, no?
would make a lot of sense. And we know how Harbaugh feels about his tight ends. And the other thing, just an awesome matchup up front. If you're into line play, Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt versus Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson on the outside. That's going to be a lot of fun.
If Houston can hit the quarterback and Houston can run the football, they'll win this game. If they can only do one of the two, they're not going to win.
Turn them over. A couple other things quickly. Both J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards dealing with ankle injuries. Both were limited in practice on Wednesday, Thursday. So just something to keep in mind for a Saturday game. Let's go to the nightcap. This game is going to be glorious in its ugliness, I think. Steelers at the Ravens for the third time. I mean, not a great matchup for the Ravens.
Did you see the Russell Wilson video?
I try to avoid Russ at all costs.
Cam Hayward's coming off the field. I'll do my best Russ impersonation. Cam Hayward's coming off the field. And in typical Russell Wilson fashion, of course, he's mic'd up for Hard Knocks. He's like, come here, look at me. We're going to win 4 in a row. Ignore that. We're going to win 4 in a row. Look at me. Look at me. And Cam Hayward just like, dude, I will choke slam you through a table so fast.
We've lost 4 in a row.
We've lost 4 in a row, and you just literally choked away this game. If you tell me to look at you one more time, I will break your jaw. I will send it to you after this pod. It's tough. It's a tough 20 seconds.
I need to see it for some comedy. As you mentioned, Pittsburgh has lost 4 straight. Baltimore, on the other hand, has won 4 straight, including a win over the Steelers. I will say that game, 34-17, a little bit closer than it appeared. Russ threw the awful pick 6, and then Russ also scrambling and took a hellacious hit inside the 5-yard line, although, his fault. He brought that on himself, turned the ball over. The Steelers have done a very good job against Lamar and the Ravens. Obviously, these teams, there's no one's fooling anybody at this point. The number of times these two teams have met. Harbaugh versus Tomlin 37 times so far in their careers as head coaches. So this will be number 38. I do wonder, did you hear Lamar talk about, in the past, in the playoffs, I get a little amped. I feel a little pressure. I'm over that now. I'm done with that now. But in the past, I felt that. This is sort of the same thing we're talking about, where all of a sudden, if you're like, I don't know, 10-3, you turn the ball over early and you're a little off and you start to get frustrated as you start to press and try to do too much. And he's got so many pieces around him, although no Zay Flowers in this game, that he starts to make mistakes because there's pressure on him, right? They have not delivered. They've had really good football teams. They have not delivered in the postseason with Lamar Jackson as quarterback.
I'm not mistaken. The Steelers have won 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Do I think the Steelers are good? Not really. I don't think the defense is playing at the same level. And obviously the offense is totally, Pickens is probably the easiest guy to get in. It's like that stretch where everyone got in Odell's head and he was, kicking tees in the nets and trying to, spear Josh Norman, although he just was still being productive. But I will say this. Do I think that Buffalo, Baltimore, and Kansas City are clearly the 3 teams in the AFC? Absolutely. I don't think anything you've seen in the regular season would tell you otherwise. Do I think that there's a small but yet very real chance Kansas City doesn't have to play either team? Yeah, I do. Because Baltimore and Buffalo, whether you want to give me the stats or not, and you can tell me I'm wrong, but I know what I've watched over the last half decade. When things get tight in the playoffs, Baltimore does not score points, and Buffalo does not make the crucial play they need to win a game. And I just wonder, things are so bad for Pittsburgh. And I referenced this, I think, last episode. I know it's not the same thing, so just bear with me with the example. Jets Patriots in 2010. The Jets had been really competitive with the Patriots at that time and started to get competitive again. The Jets were really good, and the Patriots were unbelievable. And it was like MVP Brady, MVP Lamar. I'm just trying to make a couple of the comps here just for example. And I believe it was week 14 or 15. The Jets went up on a Monday night, national television, up to New England, and they got their doors blown off. And it was like, oh, that's it. Okay, Patriots are going to coast now. The Jets, even if they get in, are they going to really be able to beat New England in New England again? No shot. And the Jets went up there and beat them because, they were able to get back to doing a lot of those different things, and playing a division team a third time is really difficult, especially when they've played each other 3 times in the last 2 months. And there's a small part of me that feels like if it gets tight early, and look, the Ravens, and we're talking about this with Buffalo quickly in a minute, but if it's tight early, it's 10-10, 10-6, 6-3, whatever it is, and it's a little ugly and it's a little gross, and we're in the third quarter, is Mike Tomlin looking around going, Yep. This is I wanted this. I wanted this bleep. And it's crazy to say this. The Steelers have the better kicker right now. And am I going to pick Baltimore 100 times out of 100? Yeah, I would. But third time, just played each other a couple weeks ago. And as much as I joke about the Russ stuff, everything's so bad for Pittsburgh right now. It's like, are they going to trade Tomlin? And who's going to be there? Is Rodgers the quarterback next year? And we're doing a lot of these crazy conversations. That's usually when the Steelers pull something out of their ass a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder, does this stay tight early? And is Lamar and company as good as they've been? It's been so easy for a while now.
Yep.
If it gets tight, we've seen this game happen. And I kind of hope I hope the Ravens frankly win, but like they have to conquer a little bit of those demons, because there is a little bit of something that's like, I don't know, something. Don't you feel like that? I don't know.
No, I totally agree. And I think this is a perfect segue into our next game. And the Saturday slate starts at 1:00. Broncos at Bills. The Bills were supposed to take a step back this year. That was the narrative. They trade Diggs. They got, they let some of their veteran defensive guys go, Poyer, Hyde, guys that they were Tre'Davious White guys that they had built their identity on. They went younger. They haven't necessarily been better on defense because of some of that youth and some of the problems that they've had. They dealt with some injuries as well. But here they are, the second seed, didn't have to play for anything in week 18, costing the Patriots the number 1 overall draft pick. I think they're in the same place. Denver comes into this thing. I didn't think Denver was going to be a playoff team this year. I didn't necessarily think that Bo Nix would have this kind of year. I thought, again, we talked about him like because of his experience and the kind of player he is, there's a good floor for him. But what's the ceiling? But he's sort of gone above the floor. He's taken a few steps up the stairwell this year. And maybe he doesn't go any higher. I don't know. But it's just been a good marriage. That team has had a good vibe. Vance Joseph has done a terrific job with their defense. They're incredibly aggressive. They've got 5 guys with at least 5 sacks, the only team in the league this year. Nick Benito was one of I had to do my awards for PFWA. He was one of the final 3 guys I came down to in terms of defensive player of the year. I know that's going to sound crazy, but had a really good year for a really good defense. Yeah. Can Denver go in there playing with house money, right? And just say,
nobody's picking Denver.
Nobody picks us to win. We shouldn't, no one thought we were going to be here. They're the team. This is Josh's coronation. It's going to happen for the Bills. And same thing. We've seen the Bills get off to some slow starts. They get off to a slow start in front of that crowd. Does the crowd all of a sudden say, oh no, it's happening again? Does Josh go into Superman mode, only reckless Superman mode, and maybe make a mistake that he hasn't made too often this season? Like, do those things happen? That team has gotten tight under Sean McDermott at various points. There's a big story out today in The Athletic, Joe Buscaglia, who does a great job covering that team, about how Sean's evolved. And you'll notice him. He's smiling more. He's looser. The evolution. It's a great piece. It really is. And I don't think it's like lip service, but now it's the postseason. Now does Sean does he get tight, and does the whole team feel that vibe? So this is a dangerous game. If Denver keeps it close in that first half, if Denver's in the lead, I could see bad things happening in Buffalo. Or the flip side is Buffalo does what they've done well this year, and that is jump on you from the start. And that could be, we could be laughing at my rant just now going, man, Buffalo beat the brakes off them. It was 42-6, and it wasn't even that close.
Yeah, I joked. I don't think Pittsburgh-Baltimore will be a blowout either way. I mean, maybe it'll be kind of similar to a couple weeks ago where it's a blowout, but it's not like
it's not.
This game has potential to be disgusting, and a Buffalo just rolls. They get out to a hot start. Bo Nix throws an early pick, and it's like, oh, this sucks. It's over. That stinks, But it is what it is. But we'll get Buffalo-Baltimore next week, and that'll be really exciting and cool. And I think that's if a I think we would both say like we will probably be texting each other on Sunday, being like, okay, cool, like let's get ready to preview Buffalo Baltimore. I'm excited about it. I will say there's two teams that the Broncos could be. They're either the 2021 New England Patriots, Super Bowl winning coach, quarterback who had a really high a really high floor, low ceiling, having a really strong first year, spunky defense, good EPA per play, but not maybe necessarily all of the talent in the world, and goes up to Buffalo and gets
crushed.
Yeah, they dropped the soap up in Buffalo. There's also the possibility that the 2019 Titans, that is really good coach, quarterback who doesn't turn the football over a ton but can make some good plays, defense that's really playing it great at the right time. Nobody expects them to win, and then went into New England and went into Baltimore and beat Lamar and Brady back to back, and very much could have beaten the Chiefs in that title game when the Chiefs were kind of getting ready to start. Maybe it was 2019.
No, you're right. It was because there was and it was 21
right before COVID.
21-17 going into the fourth quarter. Titans at the Chiefs in the AFC Championship.
Yeah, it was because Logan Ryan, pick six and the whole thing. I always bring that one up. No, look, I don't think Bo Nix is great by any means. The numbers are probably more flattering, but like last week, football's a weird sport. Last week meant nothing. Obviously, they knew that the game was over the second they scored that first drive, and it was like, oh, okay, the Chiefs are literally not going to try today, and we kind of expected that might be the case. I will say, it still feels nice when you beat the piss out of your division rival 38+0, and when you've already played them really well earlier in the year, hey, the Bengals game, we didn't need it, but like we actually played really well in that game, and we got a confidence boosting drive from Bo Nix to like go out and score there, and like can we take some of that at the end of the year? And we got in the playoffs, and there's a weight lifted off our shoulders. The playoff drought's over. Nobody expects us to win this game, but hey, Nick Bonito and JFM and these guys on the defensive line get after the Bills a little bit, maybe. Patrick Surtain's going to literally blanket whatever they decide to do with him. I'll be curious how they deploy him. And when you blitz Josh, one of two things happens. He'll either kill you, or he's going to not actually kill himself, but he'll make a turnover or two. He'll get a little aggressive. He'll get frustrated. There's a chance both Baltimore and Buffalo, I just feel a stumbling block from one of them. There's football, again, it's such a weird game. It's not ever that easy where it's like, hey, we're going to get Buffalo, Baltimore, and then Buffalo or Baltimore, Kansas City, and it's going to be easy breezy. Like the networks are going to get all their prime games, and the NFC is going to be like, we're going to get Detroit, Minnesota again for sure. And the whole, I don't know, Mike. There's a good chance we do, but I don't know. I feel this has been a weird year, and I just don't know that it's going to be chalk.
Yeah, again, both those teams there's pressure on them to deliver in the postseason.
Immense pressure. Peter Schrager tweeted out, he's like, neither guy can afford another loss like that.
No, because then that's it doesn't stop. And it's funny because Lamar's postseason performances have been worthy of being dinged. If you go look at Allen's numbers in the postseason, 21 touchdowns, 4 picks. Obviously, the 4-touchdown game, they should have beaten the Chiefs, 13 seconds. McDermott, special teams, defense, Leslie Frazier, that whole thing. But
Jim Kelly's numbers were great in the playoffs too.
Exactly, and that still gets hung on you. One quick thing on the matchup. We know the Bills struggle to stop the run. Denver should be better running the football than they are.
Estimation.
Yeah. Can they find some success running the football? Because if they can, then I think, again, that plays into sort of, then you can play, not necessarily keep away, but control the clock a little bit more, keep the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. Let's go to the late afternoon window. Packers at the Eagles. Pack, of course, limping into this game. No Jair Alexander, their terrific corner, although, again, he's been hurt for quite a bit over the last 2 years. Christian Watson, their explosive deep threat, who really, I think, in the second half of the season had come on, done for the year with a torn ACL. Jordan Love, limited in practice on Wednesday, was a full go on Thursday. But just as a cautionary note, he hurt the elbow in Sunday's game, said his elbow, he did not have feeling in his elbow until 24 hours later. So I don't know if that's a nerve thing, a bruise, what have you. Something to watch as the game happens. Can he cut it loose? Is he the good Jordan Love, or is he the guy that we've seen this year who's been sort of roller coastery, in part because of the injuries, in part because there's some inconsistencies there? Meanwhile, Philly has won 12 of their last 13 games. The Jalen Hurts injury, certainly the concussion, missed basically 2 weeks, and then did not go full until Thursday, I believe. Yeah, Thursday. I was limited on Wednesday. Thursday, full go in practice. He's going to be fine. I just wonder now. I think he's going to in this game. He's going to need to be able to throw it a bit. I don't think this is one of those games where he can throw for 140 and they think they're going to beat Green Bay. I think Green Bay is pretty good against the run. And obviously Barkley is different than everybody else, but they've been good against the run this year. So I think there's going to be pressure on Hurts to deliver in the passing game. And is there going to be rust? Is that going to be a problem for Jalen Hurts in this game? That's really, to me, the only way Philly stumbles is if Hurts has one of those games, because I just think for all the talent that Green Bay has, just not coming in on a good note. There's just a lot going against them as they walk into this playoff game.
This is my upset pick. I think Green Bay wins this game, and I think Sirianni's fired on Monday.
I think you're smoking the leafy green stuff.
Is Bill Belichick the Eagles coach by Wednesday?
Wouldn't that be something, right? We talked about it all last.
He was basically twerking
right?
for that job every Monday Night Football game. It's like, him and Patricia are on the sidelines of an Eagles game. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
The Eagles are the better team. They're at home. That's great. Jalen Hurts hasn't practiced. He's practiced once. And that's important. I know this sounds insane and probably disrespectful. A.J. Brown has not practiced yet. And if A.J. Brown's not even close to A.J. Brown and you're Green Bay, you're like, we're selling out against the run and we are going to make you actually throw Devontae Smith the football 12 times. Is he going to do it? Maybe. But I don't – Jordan Love, we've seen in big moments, he has played really good football. And they're not playing great football right now, but I do weirdly feel like as much as they were playing good football last year down the stretch, it was more like Love was playing. I don't know. Green Bay's weird. And can't you just see like another team where I talked about Baltimore and Pittsburgh like this, and it's very different, but these two teams played each other earlier in the year and Love got hurt and like the Eagles escaped and Saquon single-handedly took over that game. But when you see a team twice like that, I think LaFleur's a better coach than Sirianni. Does he have something up his sleeve of like, hey, I know we didn't win, but I saw something. I found 2 or 3 things, a chink in their armor. I found something with Fangio I can take advantage of. There's a lot of pressure in this game, and we talked about Baltimore, and that's more about the quarterbacks to me. And could McDermott lose his job? Maybe, theoretically. Harbaugh's not going anywhere. Those are something about Philly. There's so much pressure, and it'll get really loud there or really quiet early. And I don't know. I know you probably talk yourself into all the underdogs in these games. It's very easy to. They're all playoff teams. They're all good teams. Green Bay, they're too talented to go out one and done this year. Something about it to me is like, there's no way this team that we thought might win 14, 15 games is going to have survived the NFC North. And they're the 7 seed, but 11-win team. Like they're going to go out like this. I don't know. I like Green Bay in this game. I can't really tell you why, other than Jordan Love was awesome. This is funny because I
think you make valid arguments for it. I think Josh Jacobs is certainly capable of somewhat close to matching what Barkley does. Such a physical, such a good runner. I think they've been a better team with him in the backfield, and we loved Aaron Jones and all he did, but like been consistent presence for them. I love the physicality with which he runs. This was the game that I felt most confident about as I looked at the games. And again, if I could pick games for a living, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd just be picking games and making money and hanging out on a beach somewhere in Bora Bora. But I don't know. I just looked at it and I said, I just don't like the vibe I'm getting from Green Bay at this point. I don't like the way Jordan has played. I
don't really like anything about what Green Bay is doing other than like preconceived notion that they should be able to figure it out.
I mean, because their roster is talented. They're a team that can certainly punch.
Watson too.
Yep.
It's like almost everything's going against them that you're like. Wait.
I love Jaden Reed. I think Jaden Reed's been invisible for like 6 weeks.
Yeah, I'm saying nothing's going right.
Wicks has had crazy drops all season long. It's like, I just don't feel good about pretty much any aspect of their game other than maybe Josh Jacobs and their run defense. And I don't know. We'll see. This could be, even though like I said, this could be the most entertaining game. I could see both these teams putting up in the high 20s, and we just have a nice 27-24 come down to the wire type football game. I mean, I'm here for it. That's what I want. I want some competitive football games.
I'm worried. 34-29. One thing to remember in that game, both quarterbacks, Hurts was bad, I thought, in that game.
That field was a mess, remember?
The field was a mess.
Mexico, right?
Love wasn't good either. And I'm just curious. It'll be interesting to see. Both quarterbacks turned the ball over a lot in that game. It felt like, I know it was 3 combined picks, but it felt like a lot. We'll see. Packers had a chance to win it there in the end, and Love got hurt. Kind of changed their season a little bit. Does he get a little bit of revenge on Sunday?
Last one in this game is Monday night.
Yep.
Wait, did I miss one?
No,
I got it. All right. Monday night.
Yeah, we did miss one. Washington, Tampa.
Oh, duh. See, I knew it.
And then we'll do Minnesota Rams on Monday after we.
Yeah, good call. Got a little slap happy there. What did I do with my notes? I don't even need my notes. Commanders at Tampa Bay.
You like Washington? I feel like.
So I did. I talked myself out of it.
Yeah, me too.
All week long, I'm thinking like, this is the upset. Because first of all, I don't think either team can stop each other. So I think we're getting points galore in this game. I just wonder, Washington, and I know Jaden's been awesome this year, rookie quarterback, first playoff game. Believe it or not, the Tampa Bay environment can be tough. I feel like Tampa Bay is playing with some swagger right now. Not that Washington isn't. I don't think Washington can run the ball on Tampa, so I think it's really going to fall upon Jaden Daniels to go into, throw for 275 and rush for 100. And not that he's not capable of it, but the more I thought about it, I don't love either coach, Quinn or Bowles.
I was just going to say, this is their coach. It's the same guy coaching against each other.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to say it's a strong feeling that Tampa's going to win. I wouldn't, if we sit here on Monday and we're like, oh, well, Washington, the Daniels took over. The experience, I think, matters a little bit too here. And I'm just going to say it's Tampa in a close one.
I think the key to this game is, I don't want to say it's pretty simple, but if you're Tampa Bay, you have to tackle well. I thought they tackled well, mostly in the opener, or that was the opener, right? Yeah, mostly in the opener.
The only game Jaden Daniels, by the way, said he was nervous for. Told Chris Sims that the only game this year I felt nervous for was the opener.
I think that if two things. One, if Tampa tackles well, they'll win this game. Just because a lot of Kingsbury stuff is being able to tackle his guys in space, and Jaden likes to get his guys out, get the football out, and Jaden himself, if you can wrap him up and tackle him and hit him early on. Baker's got to take care of the football in this game. He's been really good this year. He's been really, really productive. No question about it. But this needs to be like a Baker 3 touchdowns and maybe a pick game, not like 4 touchdowns, 3 picks, Brett Favre, type of Jordan Love against the Vikings, like week 3 type of game where you're like, yeah, you put up 28 points, but you turned the ball over 3 times and you gave them 3 possessions back, and we also couldn't really stop them. It can't be one of those. So I like Tampa slightly. Bowles likes to choke big games away, but so does Dan Quinn. It'd be really nice if the Commanders, for a story for the Commanders, hey, we went, year 1 of this thing, and we won a playoff game. Do they have a little "we're happy to be here" vibe? Maybe not. I hope they don't. But I wouldn't like blame them if they did, because it's like, hey, we weren't even expected to be here. We didn't really beat very many good teams. I mean, they beat Atlanta at the end of the year. They beat Philly. That was cool, but they also beat Philly without Hurts the second half. Tampa beats good teams, and they're pretty bad against bad teams. So I like Tampa, but I'm not. Unfortunately, with this game, it feels like this might be one of the only games on the slate, this and Chargers-Texans, where like next week you're not really super pumped about the game they're in. Maybe we're wrong, but they don't give you they don't give me they could go on a run. Tampa, I felt that way a couple weeks ago, but no Godwin, and some of the injuries and last week's performance just gives you a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, the no Godwin thing is big to me. And I think maybe one of the things that sort of had me tilting in their direction, though, was last year and at least having a solid representative performance being tough in the postseason. Like, okay, now we have that sort of in our DNA a little bit. Can we carry that over this year? So that would be my thing. You mentioned we will talk Vikings and Rams on Monday when we reconvene for the All 32 pod. It is, however, time for prize picks. I have 3 of them for you. I'm going to go less on Ladd McConkey's receiving yard, 75.5. I think Ladd McConkey, they've done more with Derek Stingley. They played a little bit more man. They moved him around a little bit. I think D'Amico will have a plan for Ladd McConkey. I don't think it will matter in the end, but I think he will be less than 75.5. Mark Andrews has been a touchdown scoring machine lately, so I'm going to take the more than a half a touchdown for Mark Andrews in this game. And I will also say, because I think now you're into that mode where it's like win, go on, lose, go home. I think a lot of these quarterbacks start looking at their rushing numbers, the guys that are mobile and explosive, and I will take Lamar Jackson more than 50.5 yards rushing.
Ooh, interesting. All right. Well, I don't know. I've gone back and forth here because I'm going to go CJ Stroud less than 235 passing yards. I feel like this could be a 19 for 32, 210 type of game for him.
2 picks.
Touchdown or 2 and, a couple picks. And you're like,
yeah.
You just go in the offseason, you're like, ugh, that wiped the season away. I guess I hinted at it. Jordan Love, more passing yards, more than 220. I know Philly's defense is really good, but Love still threw for 260 in a pretty bad Jordan Love game week 1. That one to me is like, I don't know, 220 doesn't feel like overly ambitious. I'll give you a random one here. Pat Freiermuth, more than 43.5 receiving yards. If they have any shot of winning this game, Freiermuth and Pickens have to be top of their game, which God knows what that even means. But 43.5 feels about, could he be 5 for 60 and a touchdown in this game where you're like, yep. Oh, the Steelers kept it close. Freiermuth had 1. Najee got 1 down by the goal line. We kicked 2 field goals, and all of a sudden it's 20-20, 23-20, 2 minutes to go. That's really their only path to victory. So Freiermuth more, Jordan Love more, and our boy CJ Stroud less. I sound like such a hater of CJ Stroud. I really am.
No, you absolutely can't stand him.
No, it's just.
I'm kidding. You were on it early in the year. You're like, he doesn't look the same. And then
a lot of podcasts for him this year. Yeah, a lot of podcasts.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys like that. All right, that's going to put a wrap on this week's edition of the All 32 pod. Enjoy the playoff games, and we will be back here on Monday to review the ones that happen and preview Rams and Vikings. See you.